Okay, mindful nerd moment for being a Wakandan after all the Killmonger nonsense.
Oof.
Um, yeah, intense stuff. So I essentially thought what we could do is hit on some of the things that we talked about with our psychology spotlight. And right after an event, like essentially they have a civil war. It's like this
Yes.
big battle, a civil war, pitting against each other. And so thinking about the battle's over. You've
Mhm.
gone home. Now what? And it all overwhelms you and it floods you and your mind is mentally twisted about what happened. You were fighting friends and family. All these
Mm.
things that the Wakandans, I mean, we talked about how like there were things that hinted that things weren't as going as well as it seemed on the surface, but still,
Right.
I mean, this is probably something a lot of them did not expect. And so just dealing with all that overwhelmed bodily reactions, mental reactions,
Mm.
emotional reactions. And I figured we would use a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise for that because it's
Yeah.
something really good for when you're just being hit really intensely with a lot of things. And so you're getting super elevated emotionally and your brain starts shutting off. So you just need to be able to, what we call is grounding, just get yourself back in the present moment. Because what can happen is your brain essentially just goes into fight, flight, freeze mode. So I'll have you close your eyes, or you can leave them open and just not look at anything in particular. Sit straight but comfortably. And we'll start the mindful nerve moment with focusing on our breath. And I want you to not worry about changing your breath in any way. There's no right or wrong breathing here. We're just using that breath as a way to focus in on your experience today as a Wakandan. And so I want you to put yourself into the shoes of someone from Wakanda in what I was just describing. So we've gone through Killmonger battle. The battle's been won for King T'Challa. And so things have technically settled in terms of the fighting, but there's so much turmoil left. Turmoil within yourself, turmoil within the country. There's all this stuff just hitting you. You might be imagining that this is hours later, days later, weeks later, but really just thinking about just all this stuff hitting you that you're going to understandably struggle to process. So as you're breathing, just imagine that you're one of these Wakandans. And I want you to imagine yourself in what your home might look like as a Wakandan. So you can decide which tribe that you're a part of, which colors you might see, how things might be decorated. Just really create a little vision for yourself, an image for what your home might look like. Because this is the home that, as a Wakandan struggling, you're going back to after this battle. And I want you to imagine you're in that home and you're trying to sleep. You're trying to sleep within hours or days or weeks of this civil war. And I want you to imagine how difficult that would be. You probably have a lot of thoughts racing through your mind. You are probably feeling a lot of reactions in your body. You might even have injuries that happen during the battle that are making you incredibly uncomfortable. And just thinking about how this could be an overwhelming experience to just try and be able to sleep and get through another moment with all of this hitting you, this aftermath. And with that, we're going to now go through a grounding exercise. Imagining that you pause, you realize, hey, I'm getting overwhelmed here. I can't sleep. I I don't know what comes next. I'm scared. I I feel awful about what's happened in Wakanda. All these things are worrying and whirling. And so you take a pause to try and just recalibrate a little bit. So you take a deep breath, breathing in and out. And as you take those slow breaths, and you try and get a bit out of your head and into the space around you, into your home. You look around you. and you find 5 things, and there's no one else there. So you actually say those 5 things out loud to yourself, just as an added way of helping you ground yourself. It could be it could be a decoration, could be a piece of furniture, could be color, could be a texture, anything that draws your eye, identifying 5 things that you see. And then after you've done that, finding 4 things you can touch and really taking the time to notice those things. Since you've been trying to sleep, maybe it's the sheets or the covers that you're lying on or your pillow against your face. It could be the feel of fabric against your skin. It could be something you reach out and touch with your fingers. But finding 4 things to touch and noticing the different textures, how they're the same or different from one another, how they might stand out in ways that you don't always notice from day to day if you're just walking by. Finding those 4 different things to touch. Then you listen for 3 things you can hear. It could be noises outside, it could be noises in your home, it could be even noises inside your body, like your stomach growling or a ringing in your ears. But trying to notice 3 different things that you can hear. And once again, paying attention to how they're the same or different. How they might be things that you notice all the time, or maybe you don't if you're not paying attention. But just listening to them with curiosity, really seeing what those sounds are like. Next, try and find 2 things you can smell. Could be the smell of your bed or your sheets. Maybe there's a candle nearby or cleaning supplies that you've used that hang in the air. Anything that you can smell within your home. And noticing how they're the same, how they're different. And then last, 1 thing you can taste. If there's something that you have there, you can always put it in your mouth if there's a little snack by your bed. But even if there's not, you can just notice what what do you sense in your mouth from things that you ate before, and not having to worry about identifying the taste per se, but just noticing what taste might be. Then after this, now that you've done the grounding, noticing how you're more firmly planted in the here and now. Those worries are going to keep popping up. You're going to keep having to process through everything that's happened. Those injuries are still there. And you're feeling a bit more grounded in yourself in the here and now than you were a few moments. And from here, you can decide, okay, do I try going to sleep, or is sleep not in the cards for me right now, given everything going on? And maybe I get up and listen to some music or do something else that might help me get through these next few moments. So I want you to take a few deep breaths, wrapping up the grounding in the same way we started. And with that breathing, transitioning from your Wakandan home back to the mindful nerd moment, and see, Keaton, how that was for you.
That was really good. I think the countdown thing with the senses always really helps because it helps you like move from, I think moving from one sense to the next kind of, it's almost like a step down
Yeah.
kind of thing where it's like even if you're in the red, it's like, all right, now I'm in the orange, now I'm in the yellow. Yeah, it's I think it's one of those things where it's really good for gradual coming down. I think it can be very tough, like especially if you're in like if you're in the environment. Like and I think like it's one of
Yep.
those things I think it's really important to get away from whatever the rough environment
Yeah, so let's say
is
you're, like,
and
in the
then
battle.
do
It could be
this.
hard to
Right.
the grounding skill could still work, but you'd have to probably do it a
Yes.
lot more carefully because absolutely, there are things that we have this belief that if you're being mindful, you're relaxed, and that's actually not the goal of mindfulness. It's to be aware, and there's a lot
Mhm.
going on, and so especially though you wanna be careful because yeah, we've been talking about, like, these traumatic events. So absolutely, like, grounding could still work, but you might need more guidance from the outside or more structure within yourself potentially to do it well because, yeah, you could inadvertently focus on the very things that are deregulating you, which then kind of throws you into it a bit more. So, yeah, and in those at those points,
Yeah.
if a person could pick maybe an object, sometimes that could be good because this one's a little bit more free flowing, like find 5 things in the room versus have an object that you're focusing on looking at.
Mhm.
So you could have an object that you know, okay, this is an object that's separate from the traumatic event. So that could work better in those kinds of situations, or just focusing on breathing, which in and of itself can be really good for grounding. That way you're not focusing as much on the stuff going on around you. But it's a really good point about like, where are you located? Are you in a safe space? Because if you're not in a safe space, the very things that you're paying attention to might be re-triggering to everything overwhelming you.
Right. I really yeah, I think that's just think that's a really good one. That's also a good one to do like even if you're like if you're not going through something and just trying
Oh
to kind
god,
of
yeah.
wind down, like I think
Yeah.
it's good. Like it's I could put that in that counting sheep category almost that people always talk about they
I
do
like
before
that.
bed.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just like oh I'm tired and looking around the room and I look at my lamp, at the window and then I fan and then I see what I smell and I think that's
I
one of
love
those
that
things
idea.
and
Yeah, like having it as like a ritual thing.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, like it's like an every and every night kind of thing, like just to kind of go into like just to kind of try and shut your mind down a little bit, like just especially for people like me that just is in a constant state of overthinking.
Well, and what I would argue is, because here's the thing: if you have a mind that's always going, if you try to shut it down, you're working against the brain
That's true.
because it's not going to want to shut down, and it's like, okay, I got to be quiet, I got to be quiet, but you're actually having to talk to yourself in order to give yourself that command. It gets screwy,
Right,
right?
it gets loud.
Yeah, gets super loud. Versus, okay, where's the energy directed? And so is it directed all over the place, here and there and everywhere, or am I redirecting it? And it takes effort. You have to
Hmm.
keep redirecting. But do I want to redirect it into the present, which a lot of times is just more grounding, essentially.
Hmm.
So for things like sleep and whatnot, that can be really helpful. So yeah, instead of like I'm stopping my brain that doesn't like stopping, instead it's I'm redirecting my brain to something
Hmm.
else to focus on that's hopefully gonna be more helpful to getting to sleep.
Gotcha. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, yeah, the brain isn't designed to just shut down and not think. Like that's not really a thing, but you can just redirection
Yep.
is good. It kind of reminds me
And
of like dealing with toddler. Like it's
yeah.
like you're like or dealing with little children. A lot of times just saying no and what they can't do isn't going to work. But if you're like, hey, how about we do this? Like
I know
that
it
tends to
feels like
work
you're
way better.
I love what you're I love this comparison because as a newly parent with toddler person, it does feel like you're cheating or you're like skirting your parental responsibilities. But it's true where it can actually work against you to try and hit something too directly.
Hmm.
No, don't do that. So for
Yeah.
some people that might work for their brain, like, no, don't do that. But it's better to instead redirect Like,
Yeah,
hey, let me direct you to something more helpful. So then
I'm not
there's
good
not
at it.
that conflict and fight going on. Yeah.
I'm not good at it. My wife is the one that definitely told me to try that, and it does work, but I'm still not. Coming from college and high school, nope, not very good at it, but working on it, getting
There you
there.
go. Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/bat therapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.